Welcome to MSP Voice, the weekly show for MSPs by MSPs. Brought to you by Cloudberry, the #1 cross-platform cloud backup. Learn more at cloudberrylab.com. This is MSP Voice. Hello and welcome. This is episode number 41 of MSP Voice. Great interview today with Scott Bell from the St. Benedict Technology Consortium. Interesting business. Scott runs an MSP, but it's completely not for profit, and everyone he supports obviously is also not for profit as well. So really cool interview. Great, interesting business model. So definitely stick around for that after this brief intro. Housekeeping, MSPvoice.com, as always, is your source for all things MSP Voice. We've got a webinar that we did, recorded, that we've got up there with Carrie Simpson of Managed Sales Pros. Had a lot of fun with this one. Carrie is a lot of fun, so definitely check that out. It's all about cold calling. Also, we've got a webinar coming up this week with Benedict, so that's going to be a good one. That is on the 26th at 2 p.m. with Piers Mummery. So I've seen the presentation. Should be a lot of fun on that one as well. Also, we just want to remind everybody from a community perspective, MSP Voice is on Facebook. So if you scroll down a little bit on the MSPvoice.com page, you'll see links to follow us on Facebook. We have a Facebook page, group. Ask to join. We'll get you in, post updates and stuff there. Also, we are on Twitter. So on Twitter, it's MSP_voice. So definitely follow us on Twitter if you do Twitter. Check us out there. So that way you keep up to date with all the announcements that are going on. So with that being said, couple of stories this week. This one, I included it because it was kind of funny. Not funny for the company that it happened to, but just, why you need to enable two-factor authentication and all those other types of things. Basically, this IT got fired, but before that happened, he annihilated 23 of his ex-employers' AWS servers. So this comes from the Naked Security blog at Sophos. Basically, the story reads that, he'd only been at the company for a short time, but he was able to get one of his coworkers' logins, able to log in as that coworker and nuke all this data, all this information on their AWS account. The experts say if they would have had two-factor authentication, this wouldn't have happened. Those types of things. So always be thinking about that when you're out there talking with your customers, whether it's Office 365 or G Suite or anything. Two-factor authentication can be extremely important. Next up is another gloom and doom story for MSPs out there. We've seen these types of stories before. I've talked about Office Depot in the past. Now it's Konica Minolta, which some of you may have already been competing with because they bought an MSP several years ago and they've been expanding that. But they are out with a new device. I guess they've taken the multifunction printer to the next level, and it included basically server hardware into it as well, and they're calling it the Workplace Hub. So it's an interesting piece of technology. Reading the interview, the CRN article, it's really interesting to see what he says. And that's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to editorialize too much, but I'm like, I don't know. The MSPs that I talk to are doing a lot more than what just multifunction printer device is going to be able to do, and in the customer relationships and those types of things. So they have some ambitious goals. They bought this all covered. They've got an MSP subsidiary and then some other things. They're opening these new data centers and call centers. So and he says, are we looking to replace other MSPs? The answer is 100%. That's Sam Arago, EVP of Sales and Channel Programs at Konica Minolta, told CRN. So they're coming after you. They're coming after you with this beast of a multifunction printer. Spits out 28 pages a minute, does faxing and scanning and copying and all that type of stuff too. And it can serve up your email. So be on the lookout for this. I would love to hear from folks who have either seen this or where they're competing, and maybe you got replaced by this Workplace Hub. They seem to think it's the future and how all small business is going to run. So like I said, they're very ambitious. They've got some lofty goals. And, you know, he says the SMB has been settling for IT. It is what it is. I don't think that's the case. I think the MSPs have, you know, managed services. That's what it's all about. It's not settling for IT. It's kind of handing off IT to someone who knows what they're doing and managing it for them so they don't have to think about it. I don't think the small businesses necessarily want to control their own IT. I think they are happy with people doing it for them, the MSPs. So they're aiming for workforces between 10 and 100 workers. So if you're in that space, watch out from Konica Minolta. Sorry, can't even hardly say it. So again, I would love to hear from someone if you've come up against them or one of these devices. And finally, Microsoft is now previewing the Azure-based Windows Virtual Desktop as a service. It's now in technical preview. I think I've talked about this before. I think it's kind of interesting. You know, if you're already all in on Office 365 and those types of things, why not just deliver desktop as a service to your customers through this? I don't know if people are interested in doing that. Are you doing virtual desktops today? You know, is it running like on a Citrix infrastructure? How are you delivering it? This is just a new way to do it. So this article here in Channel Futures talks a lot about, you know, what the service is, how they're going to they're still going to continue to partner with others. You know, Citrix is brought up in here, Liquidware Labs. So there's still going to be integrations, but it's going to be interesting to see how this takes off. And, you know, desktop as a service I think it's been promised for a long time. I know some are delivering it, but now Microsoft is going to be delivering it. The most interesting part of the article that I see, especially for all of you out there that still support Windows 7 because your customers have programs that only work on Windows 7, is if you go all in on this, you will get extended support for Windows 7 through, I think, 2023. And you don't have to pay the extra extended support contract for it. If you sign up for Windows Virtual Desktop, it will include those patches until 2023. And it will virtualize Windows 7 desktops with free extended security updates. So that might be an interesting thought. If you've got Windows 7 out there you just can't get rid of because of requirements or whatever, take a look at this, and you don't have to pay for the extended support. With that, I am now going to jump into the interview portion. Again, Scott Bell with St. Benedict Technology Consortium, nonprofit MSP. Really, really interesting interview. It ran a little bit long, but I really enjoyed it, so hope you guys do too. Hello and welcome. This is MSP Voice. Today I am very excited to be joined by Scott Bell. Now the company that Scott started is called SBTC, and the SB has nothing to do with his name, Scott Bell. It has to do with the St. Benedict Technology Consortium. And the interesting thing, and why I'm so happy to have Scott as a guest, is they are a nonprofit MSP supporting other nonprofits. So Scott, tell us more after I probably bungled that introduction, but really interested to hear your story.
No, that's a great summary, and basically we grew up out of a need. I started the organization about 10 years ago, and I'd actually written a grant for a school I was working at, and they dropped 400 laptops on us, and everybody was, yay, we got laptops. And then, about a month after having the laptops, they said, so the $40,000 that we promised you that would come with this grant that you can use for staff? And I said, yeah, I've really been curious about that. Because you are a private school, a private entity, we as a public entity don't know how to give that to you. And I said, oh, and they said, yeah, so we're going to buy you projectors. And I'm like, which of course allows me to hire a tech with projectors as pay. Yeah. And I went to the administration mid-year in a school and said, you want to hire me staff, right? And they laughed in my face and said, no. Mm-hmm. All right, that's not in the budget. That's not going to happen. And so I said, look, we got a little bit in the budget for this. Let me think outside the box. If I was to go to some schools that I know and offer to share technicians, could we get somebody, some people capable in here? Mm-hmm. And they said, yeah, we could probably figure that out, right? And that's why it's a consortium, because we started out on how do we do this as a shared resource pool? And we moved over time into a more formal MSP, managed antivirus, managed backup, managed service model generally. But yeah, basically, it was all needs-based grassroots. And there's a tremendous number of nonprofits out there that they don't need full scope IT admin. They don't need on-site anybody. But they need somebody to call, and they need, somebody to give them some advice. I think probably the main differentiator with us is about our mission, is the fact that at the end of the day, our mission is to help other nonprofits be more efficient, and more effective in their missions by using technology. And it ultimately is probably what every MSP is offering people. For us, the success of that mission is if we're helping a food pantry and we help them save 5% on their operating costs, 5% more people they feed.
Yeah. No, it's.
And so, the work that we do really very specifically, benefits the community that we're in. We feel good about that work. As we're kind of talking about in the pre-show, there's a little bit of, there's a little bit of ongoing gratification with that, right? As a nonprofit, we are only allowed to work with other nonprofits, right?
Yeah.
A doctor's office could call me and say, I'll give you $10,000 an hour to come fix this. I can say no, right? And so, the constraint is that we are only allowed to work with those clients.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but because I was telling you earlier that I've talked to several MSPs who focus on nonprofits. They do a lot of work with nonprofits, but they're as MSPs, they're for profit themselves. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No.
We all need to make money. But I think when you yourself are a nonprofit, I think you mentioned earlier that you can make a ton of money in a calendar year, but your salary is not going to go up. There's no necessarily bonuses because everything's budgeted out. You've got it all set. And at the end of the year, if you have an excess, that has to go back to your clients. Yeah.
And that's really the thing that for a team in the field, for me, look, we do a tremendous amount of procurement for clients, right?
Yeah.
Thousands of Chromebooks and whatnot every year.
Yeah.
But that is all incoming, right? I have never sent an email that says we have a special on. Right.
Oh, yeah.
We not engage in sales. We engage in procurement for our clients. And, and the guy is in the field. There's no quotas. There's no selling. There's no upselling. There's I want them to know the services that we offer so that if a client is saying, hey, I think we really need to back this stuff up, we can say, well, back can help you with that. Right.
Yeah.
But there's not specifically lock-in for that. There's not, right? It's really, all the things that are going on in the MSP space about saying, look, we can bulk order seats and for antivirus and things like that. We're doing that in exactly the same way with exactly the same tools, but we're either passing those savings on directly to the clients in terms of not charging them as much, or we are turning that around at the end and saying, well, we made $1,000 from antivirus this year. Let's host a free training for everybody so that they can benefit from that revenue. And the fact is that I know people in this space, people elsewhere who say, well, but you don't have anything to show for the work that you do because you sort of don't have skin in the game. And I'm like, well, I founded the company. I have skin in the game. Because if people aren't happy with us, I'm out of a job, right?
Yeah.
We all have skin in the game that way. But, really, what I feel like is I'm not required to sell. I'm not required to push that out there. It's really very much more, just about the technical needs, right?
Yeah.
And I get to feel a lot more, and the folks working here get to feel a lot more that thrill of engineering, right? Back when we were all in school, all just sort of starting out, and we're like,
Yep.
isn't this exciting? And can't we change the world with this? Think of all of the good things that we could do with that. And honestly, it's really easy for us to keep people and retain employees because they're like, no, I get to have fun all day. I get to engineer solutions. Nobody expects me to add billable hours.
Yeah, and you don't have managers or executives over your head trying to push profit and trying to say we need to streamline this or we can't do that because it's hurting our bottom line and all those types of things. So, and because you're doing this for other nonprofits, I mean, like you said, you feel good about what you do. Besides just the cool engineering aspect of what you do, you're actually out there helping other organizations that need the help.
Oh yeah, and I mean, I'm sure anybody who has worked in schools understands this. You sort of curse Apple's or Android's packaging as you're unboxing the 50th iPad and entering that 50th serial number in DEP so that you get all of this stuff registered, and you're like, oh man, never again.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the tech who did that goes out the next week and you got the kids with the tablet in their hand and they're all excited and they're raising their hands. And you're like, I did that. I implemented that. These children are learning better because of what I did last week.
Yeah.
It's super easy to keep employees when that's the hit they get week after week after week is this is fun. This is good for my community. And, I mean, part of it too is we serve, we're in Chicago, we serve actually all of Cook and Lake County, which is a pretty big area.
That's a very large area.
But at the same time, if we've got a tech who lives in the northwestern suburbs, most of their sites are in the northwestern suburbs.
Yeah.
They live right along the lake. They're mostly there. And if they're on the south side, then they're mostly there. And so, these people are driving to a nonprofit in their community, generally speaking, right?
So they can actually see the benefit of what they're doing, because it's benefiting their community directly where they live. Yeah, that's great.
And so, I totally get people who have very large service areas with relatively niche clients, and you say, well, I drove 50 miles and worked on this all day, but I never come out here and I never see this. And I'm like, no, this place is down the road from your house. You had dinner, in that neighborhood last week. And, again, schools are obviously community organizations, text me, I bumped into somebody I work with at this school over the weekend right. And so they definitely feel, the benefits of that, right? I have a good story. We have some policies about, the limits of what techs are allowed to do. Right? I have a good story about how we kind of put some constraints on that. We had a tech several years ago, and the school really wanted him to chaperone a field trip for them to the zoo. And I was like, well, this is not related to technology, but it's wonderful that you that you are this close to your community and that you are engaged in that, and that the kids are excited about you going, and and that really is a huge reward for people, right? You can look, there are a lot of wonderful places to work, right? But to a certain extent, you can pay people to put up with a certain amount of abuse and tedium and difficulty, right? Or you can give them really fun work to do, and very few people will work for free, right?
I'm like, they're not volunteers. I mean, you pay them a salary, right?
Yeah, right. We pay them, but between being a nonprofit and being an IT organization, right? We should have turnover, of 300% a year, right? That's pretty much the double whammy. But in point of fact, we have really very good retention for both types of organization, because it's a great place to work, right? You know, I mean, and I would love to take all credit for that as the manager, right? You know, but realistically, it's the work that we do. It's the fact that people can feel good about the things that they're doing all the time, and you know you know, I've talked to a number of people in this space, and honestly, I think that there are a lot of people out there who are really interested and excited in that aspect. You know, look, you know, it's, I mean, yeah, you know, even if it's dollars on the for-profit side, right? Can you get excited about what your clients are doing? Right? You know, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, because, you know, I've come to this realization, you know, I mean, it's kind of obvious to some folks, but it's just one of those things that, you know, managed service providers, they are responsible for keeping small businesses running from a technology standpoint. You know, small businesses, you know, throughout the United States. And there are so many managed service providers because there are so many small businesses. And I think a lot of the MSPs that do this is because they're doing it, you know, for businesses within their community. Right. It may not be, you know, like the nonprofit like what you're doing, but they're still supporting these small businesses that are in their community. You know, and those small businesses help the economy, you know, bring in the tax base and all these types of things. So you're really kind of helping out other small businesses just like yourself, because most MSPs are small business. They're supporting other small businesses. So, you know, it's a really great way. And I think a lot of, you know, and I know a lot of the MSPs I talk to, they really like that aspect of what they do, is that they're, you know, they're out there helping support their community.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's, you know, I think that's, I get a lot of time because I'm not focused on sales, right?
Yeah. I do have a question about that though.
No, absolutely. You know, but just to finish that point, I get a lot of time to think about, you know, the business and the rewards of the business outside dollars and cents, because literally I have done my job if there is $1 in the bank at the end of the year, right?
Yes.
You know, everybody is delighted with that outcome, right? Which is highly unusual. But you know, so I spend time thinking about you know, quality of service and quality of life for employees and things like that, because it's freeing to say, budget's balanced, we're done, right? You know, let's figure out everything else for the organization. So you had a question about sales.
Well, so now, whether you're for profit or not, you know, you need clients, right? You need these other nonprofits. So how do you, and you know, like you said, balance the budget? Right. If you go into the year where you have this many customers and you know they're going to be paying this much, and you know you've got your overhead, you got to pay your people and those types of things, and have it zero at the end of the year. But what if you lose or gain customers, you know, in that part? I mean, and are you actually out there trying to? You said you're not doing sales, but what if how does a nonprofit find you? How do they kind of say, hey, we want to use you for your services, and can you take them on and still have that budget be balanced?
Sure. So the answer cheating now is that we're big enough that all kind of washes, right?
Okay.
You know, there's like 40 some employees at this point. And so,
oh, wow.
And so, you know, we have 2 new clients interested in joining. We're like, well, let's add a day over here and a day over, it's fine, right? And you know, that balances out pretty easily. You know, and that was tough in early days, but you know, first off, my advertising budget is essentially zero, right? Yeah. You know, I don't know, $100 a year for the website that, you know, we design, and just for the hosting, as far as that goes.
Yeah.
And we go to the Illinois Computing Educators Conference every year.
Okay.
And so, you know, we buy a booth there, but that's as much to meet and greet people, right?
Yeah.
You know, a couple other profits there, and they're really just saying hi. They're not selling anything either, right?
Yeah.
You know, and so I'm not sure if those are advertising dollars or not, right? But you know, the reality is that it is all word of mouth, right? You know, I mean, schools are small communities. Principals talk to each other, right?
Yeah.
You know, schools are education is the sector that gave us the idea of a personalized learning network, right? And who are your resources to learn things, tap stuff for, and any educator who's engaged with that idea and with current education is absolutely saying, what school do I know that's got technology handled, right?
Yeah.
And they call them up and they say, oh, we're using SBTC. And I get a call from the inquiring school a week later, right?
Yeah.
And so, like any other MSP, I have to be able to sell the idea, right?
Yeah.
But I do very little work to get in the room, right?
You're not sending out mailers. You're not cold calling.
No, right. And that's and it's a hard space to get into, right? You have to have a certain amount of critical mass. And I started this from within inside a school, right? So and so it was like, well, he's an educator, and right. I long ago was an English teacher, and so I can talk about pedagogy with principals, and that helps, right? But the reality of all of that is that we really can do that on sort of word of mouth effectively, and word of mouth is a snowball too, right? When you've got 60 schools that you support, at this point, a principal leaves one of them, goes to a new school, and calls us and says, hey, we want you here now, right? And I'm, okay, right? And so there's a little bit of organic growth just in the size that we are, right? And, and to an extent, we've had conversations with people a little farther away, and in nearby Indiana and nearby Wisconsin, in places like that, and there's a geographic constraint to growth like that, right? I almost have to have 30 clients to be able to open an office somewhere, right? That regional scaling is a whole different issue, but one client here, one client there. The other thing is that we tend to go by the academic calendar year. We do support clients who are not schools, but are academic organizations, and it is much easier to onboard a place over the summer when ticket count is 5%.
0.
And but we've had a tech there for 6 weeks before the tickets start rolling in, so they're comfortable with it. They know the setup and the environment and everything else. And all the teachers come in the first day and they're getting introduced to everything, and they say, here's our technician, and here's the ticketing process, and here's the help desk number, and here, right? Oh, okay, well, now everybody knows how to do that from day one, and we can put a good foot forward.
Cool.
But the sales, and I mentioned this earlier, we do procurement for people, right?
Yeah, you still have to negotiate.
Right. But procurement for people is really, hey, I need 20 laptops for my teachers. Great. Are we talking about Chromebooks? Are we talking about, workstation desktop replacements? Or right? What do you have in mind? Look. We don't take money from any vendors. I happen to like HP, right? We sell a lot of pro books, elite books some of the time, right? But it's really easy to talk to schools about, I know you saw this thing at Best Buy, and I know it was $300. I know this thing that I'm showing you it sounds like it's the same specs, but these are totally different machines. And I don't think they're on the website now, but we have in the past sent out pictures from every year. Every summer we buy hundreds, if not thousands, of Chromebooks for people. And we have in the past gone out and bought a consumer Chromebook and an education Chromebook and done a teardown. And so see the plastic ribbing? Do you see the internal rubberization? Do you see how this thing has 12 screws holding it in place instead of 3? Right? Like if a kid drops this on your tile floor, it's going to survive. Right? I actually have a demo, and we ended up cracking the glass in the demo, where the consumer Chromebook, the glass was providing rigidity to the plastic clamshell top.
Yep.
And in the education version, the plastic top was providing rigidity to the glass. And I'm like, when glass is your structural element, don't give it to a kid. Right? Right? You know, but
they have to be a little bit more rugged for the education market. Definitely.
But we've actually shown people that, and it's it's not upsell, right? You know, it's why should I spend $270 on this device I can get for $200? We literally show them the inside and say, this is what you're paying for, and they say, oh, right? You know that you know, when you're talking to educators, they're pretty quick to accept evidence, right?
Yeah. That's great. So one other question I had is about your employees and your techs. Do most of them, I mean, are you getting them right out of college, or have they gone and had careers in IT first, and then and come and find you?
So
and
actually both, and it is very U-shaped, right? And I'm comfortable with the organization being like that. We have a lot of people in college and just out of college, kind of starting out, and that's great because we get all the people with all the cutting edge, right? You know, they live Slack and Discord, and they're this is completely digital native. And then we have a lot of people who spent 30 years in IT, and I'm not going to get into a discussion about the industry being ageist, but maybe, right? And well, I spent 30 years doing X, and they got tired of paying me as a 30-year employee, and showed me the door, or I didn't want to do the travel anymore, or whatever their rationale is for retiring. But I got tired of sitting on my porch, right? And I'm like, so wait, you've got 30 years in server administration, find you a chair, right? If you want to work here, right? And that's amazing, right? That's awesome. But we don't have anybody with 10 years experience right in the middle. I mean, there are a couple, right? Tell anybody short, but we have people who are very early career and people who are sort of end of career and saying, I don't want to get out completely, but I definitely don't want to, dating myself, wear a pager anymore, right?
Well, no,
I know there's still a wonderful service called PagerDuty, so I know that the phrase still carries, right? But the point being that we've got both sides of that, but we don't have a lot in the middle, and that's totally fine, right? And it's actually a lot of fun to have college kids talking with 30-year veterans and watching them both learn from each other, right? And so, but and the college kids, the recent grads, do tend to turn over, right? They get 4 years with us, and they say, this was great. Somebody just offered me, 3 times as much. And I'm like, awesome. Good for you. Right. We're comfortable with that as an organization. Right. We want people to stick around for several years, but, I'm not even sure if anybody in the world is looking for 20-year employees anymore. I'm not sure if that's the reality we live in today.
Yeah, well, since pensions don't really exist anymore, it's kind of...
well, exactly. I mean, well, maybe for teachers, right?
Well, teachers, there's a lot of good state retirement plans, but for IT folks, pension is pretty much non-existent.
But the fact is that a lot of the stuff that we do, and this is true for schools, it's not unique to us. Schools have a competitive need to push the envelope with technology, right? I mean, they have to be seen as innovative, right? As current with technology. And
focus on STEM and,
absolutely, right? But that means that to a certain extent, and they're even moving away from labs, right? But to a certain extent, the machines in the lab are 4 years old. Well, we need to replace those. Are you changing your software? Are you changing your curriculum? No. Why do you need to replace them? Because they look old, right? I mean, that, right? And there's a competitive element to that. There's there is a business driver for them needing to do that. it really has nothing to do with productivity, right?
Yeah.
The guys who work for me and I myself have worked in, graphic design, 3D animation, and places where, no, every 18 months I need a new workstation because the software is actually going to, the level of productivity actually supports expense, right? The schools would be fine with an i3 or an i7, right? Chrome, Google Apps, right? we get them kicking and screaming sometimes to do video conferencing like this, right? And but there is a competitive need to have current technology and to use current services and so forth. And so, and that's one of the things obviously that drives support is the fact that, they can't sit there and say, well, we're going to do a refresh of our 5-year-old computers because they won't run Win 10 anymore, or they won't run the current version of Microsoft, right? So but that gets to be really interesting when we have people come in and learn so much as sort of generalists, and it's like, no, every day you will have your hands on multiple projectors and multiple interactive systems, and probably 4 or 5 different platforms with bring your own device. And, right, people leave here coming in as level 1 techs, leaving here as I'm pretty comfortable, the equivalent of a level 3. We have a lot of people do that. It's like, I spent 3 years there, but I left and got hired as a level 3. And I'm like, of course you did, because no one outside of school would have this kind of crazy, high demand. I need to do everything all the time. By the way, there's 7 platforms in the building and 20 different peripherals. Go. Right. And, nobody trains to be a generalist anymore. Right. I'm pretty sure if I went and got a comp sci degree, I could probably get through with nothing more than C#. Right. But I love the comp sci guys. I know that the industry continues to silo and pigeonhole tighter and tighter. And
it does.
And it's great it's great watching the software guys learn hardware, and it's great watching the hardware guys learn software, and seeing these generalists grow up. And sometimes they go and take a much narrower niche somewhere else. But I tell them, I'm like, guys, it's a great place to work because you're going to quickly be the project manager in your next job, because you can talk to the hardware guys, you could talk to the software guys, you can talk to the systems guys, because you've touched all of that enough to be the one who can communicate it well.
Yeah. So we're towards the end here. It's time for the rapid fire round. 6 quick questions. They're easy. Just the first thing that comes to mind. Answer. So you ready?
Yep.
Apple or Android?
Android.
Mac, Linux, Chrome OS, or Windows?
Probably Chrome OS.
Okay. Amazon, Azure, Google, or something else?
Google.
Okay. Local backups or cloud, or both?
We do both.
Okay. Should you always virtualize?
Well, we talked in the pregame about a 4-person office, so no, right?
Okay.
But only in specific use cases, right? But I would say, actually, for a long version of that, we actually like putting in like a higher level Synology, like a 900 series, and actually having it run the little Active Directory Lite that it's got on there.
Oh, okay.
We didn't even put in a full server, right? It's a server appliance, essentially. And no, we don't virtualize those. Technically, those even have virtualization on box, right?
Yeah.
But no, we'll let a 4-person office run a physical box, and just about everything else is virtualized. Right?
Okay. And then the final question: which is worse, printer support or vendor cold calls?
For me, vendor cold calls, because I have because you remember those guys who spent 30 years in the field. 2 of those guys are 20-year HP printer expats for me. So
Oh, okay.
They could field strip printers blindfolded. vendor cold calls, and honestly, I do okay with those, but the clients hate them, right?
Yeah. Yep. Well, and you're a nonprofit, so like I said, you got your budget set. You typically, unless you're looking forward to the next, fiscal year, your hands are kind of tied probably on new technology. So.
Yeah.
Well, great. Wow, it's been a great discussion.
Absolutely.
Anything, before we go, I mean, I know we talked about a lot here and there. Any advice out there for anyone looking to get into the MSP business or looking to help support not-for-profits in their communities?
I mean, I think that probably the biggest thing, working with nonprofits in particular, whether from the MSP side or whether from the personal side, is that they are people first, right? I mean, nonprofits exist to help people.
Yeah.
Mostly run by volunteers who are there because it makes them feel good, right? And there are very few teachers who will tell you that they are there in a nonprofit school because it pays so well, right? Right? You have people who are committed to mission, and so whether you want to be involved in the nonprofit space and helping them, or whether you want to be involved in a support context, it really is about, the people, the personal connections, and, that being rewarding to you, right? Because most of my conversations, even about sales, right, with air quotes, are not about money. They're about how will this help us do things, right? And most of my conversations with people about organizational effectiveness outside the scope of the work that we do is, how will this help our organization? How will this help the people who work here? And those are the kinds of things that, you could go into a nonprofit and say, we have this product that will give you like a 30% ROI. And a lot of them will look at you and say, but Jane is over there ladling soup by hand. How is this going to help? Right? Yeah. Fix that for me. Right. To a certain extent, and it's not like this is ever bad advice. If there's an organization that you want to support, whether it is personally or whether it is professionally, go and volunteer with them for a week, right? And say, I understand what this is. I understand what you're doing. And these things that I saw on the ground with you are things that we can fix, right? And the fact is, that if it's something that's important to you, if it's something that resonates with you, even if you start supporting them professionally, you can also help them personally, right? Yeah. And if it's not for you and you don't have the time, you send one of your kids and you say, service hours for school, whether I've raised you to be a good individual, whether this is simply the thing to do, they need some help. I don't have some time during the day. You're going to be there all summer helping build houses for Habitat or whatever the case may be, right? Yep. And, but that level of involvement is what's going to help you be involved with the organization in whatever capacity you want to be. Generally speaking, even though nonprofits are very concerned with money, talking to them about money is a very poor way of approaching them. Right? That is not something that, they care about people, they care about mission, and being able to talk to them about those things. Again, in a school, I was a teacher, and the defense shields drop as soon as they say, "Oh, you've sat on that side of the desk." Yeah. You have to make that connection. So definitely, if you can go to, a nonprofit and say, "No, I've been volunteering here for the last month, and I think there are a lot of things that we could help you with." That didn't necessarily cost you $1. It may have all been after hours. Yeah. But to them, you've literally already helped them. You've put your money where your mouth is in terms of the value of your time. Yeah. And that was your foot in the door, right? So And hopefully, coming from a nonprofit, you get excited about that. It's rewarding to you, and you or people in your family or whatever continue to volunteer regardless of your ongoing business relationship with them. Everybody wins. Right?
Yep. Definitely agreed. So, I want to thank you. This has been, great interview. I love the work that you're doing. I love your story, how you got started, everything that you're doing. So, I appreciate it, even though I don't live in Chicago anymore. But I think it's great. So
no, absolutely. Well, thank you very much for having me. It's been fun.
Yes, and hopefully I'll get to meet you in person one of these days, and we can talk even more.
Yep, absolutely. All right.
All right. Thanks a lot, Scott.
Bye.